Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Ewan, aka the Draft Monster. Today we're talking about AFL Fantasy again, and in particular, we're talking about breakout players. Today I'm taking you through one breakout player from every single AFL team to look forward to in the 2024 season. So let's have a look. Starting with Adelaide, I have Jake Saligo, who is a pure midfielder for the Crows this year. He's coming into his third year, which is traditionally your breakout year if you've had a few games under your belt. Last season he played 21 games, an average of 67, and he was also subbed off about 3 times last season, so that will affect your average a little bit, and he also had one stinker of a game as well. But if you take those scores out, those 3 substitutions and that one learning game, he is actually averaging close to 75 in his second season, which is not too bad at all. I think he's well and truly in the Crows' best 22 next year, and I think he should get a lot more midfield time next year as well. The pecking order is pretty hard to crack into when you've got the likes of Laird, Dawson, Keys, the resurgence of Matt Crouch, a few other draftees that were drafted in previous years coming through. New draftee Dan Curtin, Luke Pedlar, to name a few. It's a pretty strong mix at the Crows. I could definitely see Saligo being a handy midfielder in deeper single season leagues this year, and it would be good to see him play a full season. And if he does play a full season, I could definitely see him getting around that 80 mark next year. On to the Brisbane Lions now. I have Mr. Jasper Fletcher, who is a pure midfielder who managed 14 games last year in his rookie season. He showed fantastic composure for the Brisbane Lions, especially in their final series this year, and he actually got a new fantasy PB in the qualifying final, I think it was, against Port Adelaide, where he got 111 in that game. I feel like there's definitely an opportunity for Fletcher to make a name for himself this year, especially with fellow draftee from last year's draft, Will Ashcroft, will be out with his ACL injury for the first part of the year. So definitely a gap there, and he was already in the team, but yeah, with Ashcroft out, even more opportunity for him. So can he push his average up a little bit? Can he get his floor a bit higher next year? I would like to see him get into the 70s, if not 75 plus by the end of the 2024 season. I could really see him making a name for himself this year, Jasper Fletcher. On to the Blues now, and I have the defender Lockie Cowan having a breakout for this year. He's coming into his second year at Carlton, and he did manage just the 7 games in his rookie season. I do think he will definitely become a cult favourite at the Blues, and he's just inherited the number 2 jersey for the 2024 season. So, yeah, giving him the 2, that's usually a good sign you're gonna get some games. He's a no-nonsense defender, medium defender that is, who has great run and carry, and yeah, really nippy, really speedy out of the back half. And I think he should get a few more games this year, definitely. In his under-18 days for the Tassie Devils, he did average 99 fantasy points from 12 games in that season. So he really has that kind of stat-stuffing hunger that you want from your defenders. And if you have left defenders a little bit later in your drafts, then Cowan could definitely be worth a look, if he is named, that is. Alright, on to the Magpies, and I have Mr. Finlay McRae, who is a forward this season, having a big breakout year. He's coming into his 4th year in the AFL, and he's only played the 12 games so far, but he has played a lot of VFL, like a lot. And not only that, but he has dominated in the VFL, averaging well into the 90s, I think. He's probably the first player that has been on the hype train since the end of last season. I think Collingwood fans in particular have been raving and keen to see him finally get his shot at AFL level and see what he can do. Can we finally see Finlay Macrae crack into that best 22, especially with Taylor Adams off to the Swans at the end of last season, and Steele Sidebottom and Scott Pendlebury definitely creeping closer to retirement? It's probably not a bad idea to get that engine room youth ticking over now, so I don't see why you wouldn't be picking Finlay Macrae as a forward next year as well, when he is a midfielder by trade. So that could be a big bargain in your draft leagues next year. Just check in over the preseason, see how he's going. If he gets named early in the season and he gets a string of games, then could definitely see him averaging well over 75 this year. Consider it a second year breakout after 4 years of the AFL and 12 games. So I think it's about time Finlay Macrae got to it and showed us what he has from the fantasy perspective. On to the Essendon Bombers, and I have Mr. Archie Perkins having his breakout season finally. Perkins is a forward for the Bombers, and he is coming into his fourth season with already 62 games under his belt in his first 3 years, which is pretty consistent. He's gotten going from day one at the Bombers. He's a pretty versatile player, and it'll be interesting to see where he is used by Brad Scott at the Bombers this year. Usually he plays a bit of half forward and in the forward role, and he was getting a bit of midfield time come last year as well. The new additions to the Bombers list in the trade period and the rookies that they've gone ahead and picked could jeopardize Perkins' role a little bit. He is definitely in the starting 22 still. He's not going anywhere. But it will be interesting to see where he starts come round one. But so far, fantasy-wise, in his first 3 seasons, he has improved every single year. So obviously the first year he started a bit slow. I think he had 47 in his first year. Took that up to 58 in the second year. Last year he averaged 67. And again, he's had a string of games into the 60s already. So he's got experience, and he's actually becoming a leader at the Bombers as well. On track record alone, you can see that Perkins is always improving. He's always getting better, and I don't see that stopping this year. He's looking great at the start of the preseason, and it seems like he's really got his head on straight already for next year. So just one to keep an eye on for the next few months, and come round one, see where he is lining up for Brad Scott. Next up, I have Neil Erasmus, a ball-hungry midfielder from Fremantle Dockers. Erasmus now has 19 games under his belt over the first 2 seasons, and he managed 14 games last year, 8 of which he was subbed on or off in, which is pretty strange, and that really affected his average in the end. Of the 6 games that he actually started and played in full, when he did start and play those 6 games, he was averaging a lot closer to 74.5. So it just goes to show that when he does start and when he does play, he gets points. So just a little diamond in the rough there, I think, Neil Erasmus from last year, because he, subbed off or on 8 times out of his 14 games last year. So really affected his average. It looked like he cemented his spot in the best 22 by the end of last year, and especially with Liam Henry leaving in the trade period, I think that opens up a little bit more midfield time. There are a few other contenders coming through the ranks at Fremantle, a few rookies coming through in Matthew Johnson and Nathan O'Driscoll, probably the top 2 other contenders into the midfield this next coming year. But Neil Erasmus has come back in ripping good form. He's looking super fit, super ready to go. Training the house down, probably, someone said. Should be noted that in his under-18s, he did average 111 in that season, his draft year. So does have that fantasy kind of grunt about him, gets amongst it, knows how to find the ball, and knows how to get the fantasy points. I'd say if he gets a good run at it again this year, if he doesn't get subbed off or subbed on, then he's going to be an absolute ripper in the draft. easily, if he cements his spot, is easy M7, M6 in, yeah, maybe 10, 12 man leagues. I reckon he could average 80 plus this year after the first 2 years, and this being his third year. I reckon he is due to break out, and yeah, there's opportunities there aplenty at Freo. So yeah, Neil Erasmus. Remember that name. All right, here we are on to Geelong now, and I have Mr. Tanner Bruhn finally having his breakout season this year. Tanner Bruhn is a midfielder. He had his first year with Geelong last year, and he had a pretty good first year at the Cats too. He's now got 49 games under his belt. And yeah, that first year at the Cats, after being at GWS, he took his fantasy average from 50 all the way up to 70. So not a bad rate of return for Bruhn, and he was subbed off a lot last year as well, or subbed on. Yeah, a little bit of inconsistency there. So it will be interesting to see if he can get a string of games this year and hopefully play a full season and not get subbed off too much. The Geelong engine room has been aging for some time now, and it definitely needs that injection of youth to stand up. And I think this is the year. You know, you've got Dangerfield, Duncan, Guthrie, all over 30 now. They've been doing the job well for a while, but they can't do it forever. So I think it is finally time for Tanner to turn it up next year. Yeah, just keep an eye on him over preseason. He seems like a really committed kid. Seems like he's getting bigger all the time. He started as a little schoolboy, build on him, and he bulked up last year and showed improvements. So much improvement. So next year is going to be really interesting for Tanner Bruhn, I think, and I could definitely see him getting close to an 80 average as well. On to the Gold Coast Suns now, and Bailey Humphrey is a fantastic option next year for your draft leagues. He is a forward for the Gold Coast Suns, and he played his first season last year where he played 19 games and averaged about 51 for the season. He was subbed off 3 times in 2023, which will also dip that average down a little bit. He was picked at number 6 by Gold Coast in the 2022 draft, and in his draft season, he did average 100 on the dot for the Gippsland Power, so he just has that grunt about him. This preseason already, he has smashed his PB at the 2 kilometre time trial at the Gold Coast, and that was after getting a lot of criticism the first year that he didn't have a big tank on him, he didn't have that running capability. So he's already trying to improve where, he might see his weaknesses are. So just goes to show this guy is committed, and I reckon he's really ready to get going at AFL level. I reckon with that extra running capacity that he's building could 100% get him some more midfield time this year, and thus getting higher averages, higher disposal counts, getting amongst it a lot more. It would be nice to see him improve his floor just a little bit this year. Hopefully he can get a string of games and play a full season. Hopefully he can just stay on the park for the whole game and get that conditioning down pat in his second year. But if he is on the field and round 1, look out for that preseason, how he's going, because I could definitely see him being a big cog in Gold Coast's future this year with Damien Hardwick at the reins. Bailey Humphrey is a big chance to be Gold Coast's next cult hero, I reckon. On to the Giants now, and I have Finn Callahan, who is a midfielder for the Giants. He's coming into his 3rd year in the system, and he played, 21 games last year, which was a good string of games for him in his sophomore year. He took his average from his rookie season, which was a 54, all the way up to a 76 last year, which is a great improvement in just your 2nd year in the AFL. I can see him being a genuine midfielder option in single season leagues, maybe an M4, M5, an M6 if you're lucky enough. Because at the Giants, I feel like the pecking order is pretty thin, to be honest, and Finn Callahan is right in amongst it at the Giants. I think it's really Tom Green, Josh Kelly, Stephen Cornelio, Finn Callahan at 4. He's definitely got a big opportunity there, Finn. And he just seems primed. He's in that 3rd year. Might not have had as many games as some of the others here, but he does feel like he just belongs at AFL level already. And yeah, 2024 could really be the big one for Finn Callaghan at the Giants, I think. All right, on to my guys, Hawthorn now, and I could see Connor McDonald having a great year this year for us. He is a forward option, but he is actually really a midfielder by trade. He's coming into his third season in the AFL, and he's already had 42 games played in his first 2 years, which is, yeah, pretty good consistency. I think he's definitely cemented his spot in the best 22, and I think Sam Mitchell just loves him. Just as that midfield option, but also that crafty forward work that he does as well. He just seems to find the goal, seems to have that really good footy IQ about him, Connor McDonald. He took his average from a 52 in his rookie season up to a 70 last year in his second year. And he finished the year pretty strong as well, because after round 16, I think he averaged around 81 from then onwards. So really started to pick it up towards the end of 2023. Also, it should probably be mentioned that he averaged a whopping 121 in his under 18 year. And that was up there with Nick Dacos and all the rest of them. So yeah, just a gun midfielder who is just really gone under the radar. But he's also a forward option, and he could definitely be a very good sleeper forward option for you. A breakout chance, perhaps, at the Hawks. There's a lot going on there. It's all the youth coming through, so I think Connor McDonald could be in for a massive year there. All right, on to the Demons, and I've got Trent Rivers, who is a defender for the Demons, having his breakout season. He is coming into his 5th year in the AFL and has had already 77 games under his belt, 25 of which he played last year. So he played a full season plus 2 finals for the Demons. He took his previous best average of 58 all the way up to a 76.5 last year in defense, and that was a pretty good breakout in itself, but I reckon Trent Rivers can take it even further in 2024. He is very quick to get open for the mark and into space, and has an amazing run and carry out of the defensive 50 as well. Yeah, transitions the ball really, really well, setting up a lot of score involvements towards the end of the season as well. And after the Demons concentrated a little bit more on their midfield and their forward line in the trade period and the recent draft, I feel like that defense is really unchanged coming into the new season, and it's just going to help those guys that are younger or coming up, like Trent Rivers in particular. I think now that he's had that string of games, he's got that experience, he's still young, he's the future of the defense at the Demons, it feels like. So yeah, I don't see why he can't take it up another notch in 2024. And I reckon he could possibly be a smoky top 20 defender next year. Absolutely. Look out for those bargain buys. I think Trent Rivers could be one of them. All right, on to North Melbourne now, and there's a lot of kids at North Melbourne coming through, so there's a lot to look forward to for the years to come. But I think 2024 will be a big year for George Wardlaw, who is a midfielder for next year. He was picked at pick 4 in the 2022 draft, and he played just the 8 games last year in his rookie season. He is a gun midfielder with a great footy IQ, and I really hope he can play a full season at North Melbourne. He has been held back by injury in his draft season, and his rookie year had a few niggles as well. But yeah, if he can get on the park, if he can have a good preseason, George Wardlaw is one to look out for. Yeah, if he can really get that consistent games under his belt, I think he is a shoo-in to take the Ben Cunnington ball magnet mantle from North Melbourne, and be a really significant part of the team by at least the midway point of the season next year. And I think he will definitely get amongst it. He's ball hungry. It's a big change happening at North, and if he gets those games under his belt, I don't see why he can't get up close to an 80 average next year and be a handy option later in the midfield. So on to Port Adelaide now, and I have a defender in Miles Bergman having his breakout year this year. Bergman is a 22-year-old, and he's already played 57 games for the Power in his first 3 years. He is a speedy halfback and a bit of a wingman as well, but also he has that ability to be a key defence option too, taking a lot of intercept marks for the Power the last few seasons. So he's quick, but he's also really, really versatile as well. There is a little bit of competition for defensive spots at the Power, and that has been a little bit added on to with the additions of Brandon Zerg-Thatcher and Asavo Radigalia coming into the Power in the off-season. But I don't think that's really going to impact Miles Bergman as much. I think his playstyle is a lot different to the incoming players. He's that speedy, nimble wing option as well that can play the defensive role as well, so it's not really there to be the key back, but he can play that role. Yeah, I think he'll be fine in the 22. And I think obviously after 3 seasons there and 57 games already, Hinkley loves to play him. Hinkley, loves to get him on the park as often as possible too. So he is really quite seasoned for his age, and I could really see him taking on a lot more responsibility in the back half for the Power this year. So can he just lift his floor scores up maybe a little bit this year, get that extra bit of involvement in every game, that 1% every game, and a cheeky defensive option later in your draft leagues as a speedy defensive wingman Miles Bergman. On to Richmond now. Jack Ross. He started last year with a very dismal score of 19. I think he might have been subbed off in that one. But he went on to play 19 games in the end, and he averaged about 71, I think, at the end of last year. Jack Ross is that natural kind of wingman with the ability to play that kind of more central midfield outside role as well. He finally got a good run of games last year. I think that's what he was really missing. Been really on and off getting games since he'd been drafted. And to get 19 last year would have done wonders for him, I think. With Trent Cotchin leaving last year, I think that is a huge opportunity now for Jack Ross to get involved. You've got Tim Taranto, Jacob Hopper as your 2 big young midfielders in the Richmond lineup. And then you've got your mainstays there too in, who's that? Dion Prestia, Dustin Martin, Camden McIntosh, I think. They're all 30 plus at this stage. So it's probably about time Richmond got someone like Jack Ross in there. And it's, prime time for Jack Ross, I think. There's a change of the guard happening at Richmond, and he could be a big benefactor of that this season. Alright, St Kilda, I have Marcus Windhager having a big year for the Saints this year, I reckon. He is a midfielder defensive option, so the dual position in fantasy this year. Windhager has played 37 games in his first 2 seasons, and last year he averaged 63 fantasy points. He is St Kilda's new tagging option, and it worked out for them in a few games last year, in particular towards the second half of the season. Here's a little story about Marcus Windhager's 2023 season. In his first 6 games of 2023, Windhager was the starting substitute 3 times and averaged a very lowly 34.3 in his first 6 games. He then sat out the next 4 games and ended up starting in the best 22 from round 13 onwards, and for the rest of the season, he averaged 77.6 from 12 games. The additions of Liam Henry and Paddy Dow could make Windhager's role a bit more speculatory, but I don't think it's going to impact him too much because he is that tagging option. And they're really going to rely on him for that, I think, again this year. He has come back to this preseason looking ripping good form. He is looking fit. He is looking ready. He is ready to hunt down as many players as he can this year and tag the heck out of them. So I really think he is in for a big season, and a big season fantasy-wise as well. So definitely a good option later in your drafts, but don't leave him too late because I think he could go sooner than you think. On to the Swans now, and I'm thinking Angus Sheldrick is going to be having a big year for the Swans. Angus Sheldrick is a midfielder for next year, and he is a natural contested ball winner and always has been since his junior years. He's only played 9 games in his first couple of years, and he's actually still eligible for the Rising Star Award. He managed 7 games for Sydney last year, and his first game came in round 7, where he was actually substituted off on a lowly 18. And then he came in round 10 as the substitute, and he came in right at the end of the game and scored 8. So he was averaging 13 from his first 2 games last year. He finally started in the best 22 in round 13, and for over the next 4 games, he managed to average 91 after starting. This included a massive 29 disposal, 111 point fantasy game against the Eagles. Unfortunately, Sheldrick ended his season early last year with an ankle injury in round 17, but those 4 rounds should give you enough indication just how hungry this guy is for the ball. Those 4 games were pretty damn good for him last year. And even with the additions of Taylor Adams and James Jordan and a few draftee midfielders, I still think Angus Sheldrick is best 22, especially with Callum Mills probably missing the first chunk of the season next year with a shoulder injury. So yeah, I think Sheldrick, that is definitely in the best 22 for the Swans come round 1. And if he gets the games, if he starts, and if he gets his shot and can string together a couple of good games, look out, because this guy is a nugget. This guy loves to get amongst it. He is a beast. He was a beast in his junior years, and it's really exciting. I really hope he gets a good run in it next year. And I could see him well and truly, if he does get those games, cracking the 80 average next year. Okay, here we go. We are on to the West Coast Eagles, and next year I think it is going to be a massive year for Reuben Ginbey. Reuben Ginbey. Ginbey is a midfielder only option this year after being a defender in his rookie season, and he did suffer a season-ending hamstring injury towards the end of last year. I think it was in round 18 where he scored a lowly 15 points in that game, which really did drop his average off a bit. He had struggled a little bit after the round 14 bye last season regardless, but before that bye, he was averaging a very nice 63 in his rookie season, which is, pretty good for the first year. So far this preseason, he has come back in awesome looking form. I think he's grown, he looks faster, he's stronger, he looks like a behemoth of a man, and it's actually pretty hard to think this guy is still only 19 years old. The Eagles are obviously in a big restructure phase, and this will be the year where we see players like Reuben Ginbey, obviously Harley Reid, Campbell Chesser, Elijah Hewitt, Clay Hall maybe, Brady Hoff. A lot of these young Eagles are going to get their shot. And I think at the forefront of all those names is Reuben Ginbey. I mean, just look him up in the news. The guy is looking massive. He's looking ready. I think he is so excited for next year, and definitely one to keep an eye on for the next few months. Maybe he picks up defender status again later in the year. We'll see what his role looks like come round 1. He will definitely be in that round 1 squad. He is a long-term option for the Eagles, and I think I could also see him cracking into that 80 average, maybe even beyond for the Eagles. It's hard to say, really, with Reuben Ginbey, but he's going to be big this year, and chuck him right up your draft orders, get him in your midfield, even as an M6 or 7, and you might even be surprised when he gets DPP at some stage. So, Reuben Ginbey, very good option for next year. And finally, we have the Western Bulldogs. And I've picked a player who hasn't even played a game for the Western Bulldogs yet, and that is a man who just came over from St Kilda at the end of last season, Nick Caulfield. He was a defender for next year. He was a defender at the Saints for 6 seasons, and pretty injury interrupted 6 seasons, you've got to say as well. He was drafted at number 8 in 2017 and showed a lot of promise in his first 4 years before succumbing to a big, I can't remember what it was a big major injury in 2021, I think. So yeah, he hasn't played any AFL games in the last 2 years. He did finally come back from those injuries and played a bit of VFL for the Sandringham VFL side towards the end of last year, and I think he averaged something like 24 disposals, 5 marks a game over that period as well. So he seemed to be back and in good form and doing pretty damn well at VFL level. I think he will reignite his career at the Dogs. He was a lifelong Doggies fan growing up, which does help, I think. But if he does prepare well this preseason, I think he is well within range of a shot of a round 1 debut for the Dogs. And if he is in that round 1 team, and if he does finally get a consistent run at AFL level, we'll finally see Nick Coffield flourish, I think. I think it's been on the cards for a while now, and we just need to see him play some games, and we will see a fantastic defensive option emerge in AFL Fantasy for the years to come. And yeah, if he does get those games, I could see Nick Coffield being a handy D5, maybe averaging 75 plus this year. So there you have it, folks. A few breakout options, a bit of diversity there with one from every team in the AFL. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you found it insightful. Hope it helped you a bit think about your draft rankings for next year. If you liked any part of this video and you want to see more, please consider subscribing to the tab below, or follow me at Draft Monster on Twitter as well. Follow along with all I've got to say on there and keep up to date with new videos coming out and all sorts of stuff. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.